Well, if you've been journeying with us through Exodus 1 to 17, we're going to take a little breather over the Christmas period, but I wanted to end this particular section with this little incident the Amalekites defeated in Exodus 17, 8 to 16. And I'm going to read it in just a moment, but just by way of context, we have been engaging in a month of prayer at the Archbishop's encouragement, and I know that many of you have appreciated the morning and evening thoughts that have helped focus your prayer, and also have joined in the desire of many to spend Thursdays in particular praying for our nation, praying for our world, praying for the country as we seek to come out of this pandemic. And 24 hours of prayer over the Thursday has been great. And so as we got to the end of this section in Exodus, it seemed very right and appropriate that we focus on prayer, which I think is what's going on here in chapter 16. I'm just going to pray, and I'll read, and I'll give you 4 little thoughts. Father God, thank you so much for your word. Thank you for its timeless instruction. Thank you that it encourages us to lift our hands to you in confidence that you will fight the battle for the honour of your name. Pray, Lord, just for some guidance and direction as we seek to pray more effectively, and that we may be aware that we're battling with you against your enemies so that you might have the glory. Amen. So here we are, Exodus 17, verses 8 to 16. The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands." So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered. And Moses, Aaron and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him and sat on it. Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven." Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." He said, "Because my hands were lifted up against the throne of the Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation." Now, if you read the commentaries, there's quite a lot of discussion about what's actually going on here. For some people, it's not about prayer. Maybe it's some sort of symbolism that as Moses holds up his hand, it gives a picture of victory and they fight, or even superstition. But I am persuaded, I think, that this shows us something about the true nature of prayer, not least because of where it ends, verse 16. Because Moses' hands were up against the throne of the Lord will be a war against the Amalekites from generation to generation. This picture of hands lifted up against or to the throne of the Lord, it sort of gives a picture almost as though in prayer Joshua's holding on to the throne of heaven, as if to say, "Lord, will you fight the battle for the honour of your name?" Well, what motivates this kind of prayer? It is because we, as Moses did, can expect battles. Here we have the Israelites having crossed through the Red Sea. They're just now in the desert, perhaps only a matter of months or early years in, and they seem to fight this first sort of ferocious attack. That is how their wilderness wanderings begin. And before they come into the land, you'll remember the end of Exodus and then looking at the beginning of Joshua, that the first thing they have to do is to bring down the walls of Jericho. And again, that's done in a rather unusual way. They don't go in fighting, they actually wander around shouting the victory of the Lord, and the walls tumble down. I think that these point to the victory being given to those who come before God and cling onto his throne and say, Lord, fight for the honor of your name. And that battle is with us just as it was with Moses. I mean, it was literally an uphill battle for Moses, up the top of the hill with his hands raised, getting tired and having to persist in order that Joshua could win the victory over the Amalekites. Here are 4 short thoughts on prayer that I hope will keep motivating you to pray, not only during the month of November, as we are here in 2020 in England, but also continually, that we persist in prayer because it is the Lord's battle. First, pray expectantly. You noted that the staff features here. So Moses is told to go on top of the mountain, to stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in his hand. And the staff has played a significant role throughout actually all of the experience of Israel so far. So Moses, first of all, is told to take the staff in his hands and to throw it down before Pharaoh, and the staff turns into a snake right there at the very beginning. And all the way through the 10 plagues, the staff has been in Moses's hands as a sort of symbol of God's powerful operation. As Moses takes the staff in his hand and now prays, he is expectant that God will do it again, that God will prevail, that he will get the honor. And when we come in prayer, we don't always know what to pray for, but we should come expectant that actually when we cling to the throne of God in prayer, that God will act, and that we come with that expectation that he will do what best brings honor to his name. So pray expectantly. Secondly, pray unceasingly. This is verses 10 and onwards. So Joshua is down there fighting with the Amalekites, and Aaron and Hur up on the mountain with Moses, and they were told that as long as Moses holds up his hands, then the battle prevails, but when his hands drop, they start getting defeated. So they take a stone, put it under him and sat on it, and Aaron and Hur stand one on either side of him and hold up Moses's arms in prayer. And so long as they do that, then Joshua overcomes the Amalekites with the sword. This must be a picture, mustn't it, of the unceasing nature of prayer. You know, like the persistent widow who hammers on the king's door, who she has no other hope, but she persistently approaches the king, and eventually the king gives in. Our failing arms, need to be supported and lifted up. We will get weary. Praying is tiring, and those of you who've been praying through the night know that it is an effort to sacrifice sleep so that you can pray. Although you're all talking about what a great reward it is when you do that and how invigorated you actually feel. But prayer is a work, prayer is a battle, one which we get great joy in, but nevertheless we need to do it unceasingly. The third little picture of prayer for me here is praying communally. So Moses is up the mountain with Aaron and Hur. Joshua is down the mountain fighting the Amalekites. And in a sense, you have these 4 characters involved. Moses doing the praying, Aaron and Hur as his flank men, one on either side holding up his arms, and Joshua fighting down the battle. And, you know, in many respects, prayer is like that. You know, that we together fight for the Lord, for his honor, communally, and we're bolstered by that. There's something so invigorating and refreshing about communal prayer. Private prayer is really important. In fact, communal prayer probably won't ever happen if we don't have private prayer. But there's something brilliant about communal prayer, where we fight all together. They were victorious down below, whilst the prayer went on at the top of the mountain. So there's a communal nature of it. And then, so we've had praying expectantly, unceasingly, communally, and then fourthly, mindfully. What do I mean by that? Look at the end of this passage, verse 14. The Lord said to Moses, write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the name of Amalek. Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." So 2 sort of memorials here. The scroll, so Moses is to write down this battle. Why? Because actually there's a hint here that the Amalekites will be foes for generations, and we're going to look a little bit at sort of the end of this battle in a moment in Deuteronomy 25. So he has to write it down for a sake of a memorial to remind them, and then an altar so that a sacrifice to the Lord can be made, so that in a sense that as the smell of the sacrifice goes up, the memorial of God's giving them that victory helps them. And this whole sort of idea of the Lord as my banner, you know, remember that the battle you're engaged in is the Lord's battle, and you're playing your part by praying for the Lord's victory. Expect future battles, but remember that where there is victory, that is only because of the Lord and for the honour of his name. So listen to what how this is recorded in Deuteronomy 25:17 to 19. Remember what the Amalekites did to you along the way when you came out of Egypt. When you were weary and worn out, they met you on your journey. They attacked you who were lagging behind. They had no fear of God. When the Lord your God gives you rest from all your enemies around you in the land that he is giving you to possess, you shall blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget. So this is the mindfulness that's being called of, you know, that remember that God promises to answer prayer that calls upon him to honour his name and to fight a battle for his own honour. And be encouraged about the victories you see on the way, but remember that actually the battle will be ongoing. That's why I wrote that little book called The Perpetual Battle, because actually genuine Christian experience is warfare. So we're not out there on our own fighting our battles or by ourselves. Actually, we're in partnership with God, fighting for the honour of his name and finally trampling Satan under our feet. That's what Ephesians 6 is all about, and worthy of with a sermon all in its own right. But the thing about the armour that we put on there is that it's actually God's armour. It's the armour God fights with, and the battle we fight is God's fight. We only know victory when we fight for the honour of his name and when we fight with him for that honour. So I hope that just helps you as you continue to cry to the Lord, to bring honour to his name, to defeat the power of evil that's at work in this world, to defeat the worldliness that seeps into the church and stops us from really honouring God, and to pray that we may know God's victory at work for the honour of his name. Pray expectantly, pray unceasingly, pray communally, pray mindfully. Let's continue to do that together regularly.